Shadow Talk.
Another week means it's time for another Shadow Talk, a weekly podcast brought to you by the Digital Shadows research team. In this week's episode, it's deja brew as even more crypto miners emerge. This time it's CoffeeMiner looking to milk unsuspecting Wi-Fi users. That's some powerful Java. Turla's mosquito backdoor out for political blood. And we skate over to threats to the 2018 Winter Olympics, so sponsors and attendees can prepare before the deluge begins. All this in this week's Shadow Talk. Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Shadow Talk, brought to you from San Francisco. Well, I say San Francisco, it's actually a truly transatlantic affair. Over in London, we have our intelligence analyst, Rose Bernard. Hello, Rose.
Hi.
Welcome. Your first week at Digital Shadows and indeed your first pod. So welcome aboard.
Thank you.
And over in Dallas, Texas, we've also got Harrison Van Riper. Harrison, good morning to you.
Michael, how are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. I guess we should start off by giving an update on Meltdown and Spectre. What's been going on? The world has not melted down, but have there been any issues?
Yeah, Mike, there's been a couple issues. So this week, Microsoft decided to pull back some of the security updates that they had given out, essentially for older AMD processor chips that were affected by the vulnerabilities that were discovered last week. So Microsoft essentially began receiving reports from users saying that when they applied these patches to some of the older AMD processor systems, that it made their system unbootable. This is less than ideal, as you can imagine. So Microsoft decided to pull the update, but as of yesterday, they actually reissued the patch to a majority of AMD systems, though there were still some older chips that were left out of this updated patch. So less than ideal, but it has sort of come around.
Right. Well, yeah, definitely one to keep an eye on for sure. So the first main story of the week is some more Monero cryptocurrency mining. We briefly touched on this last week, but there's been a few significant updates on this particular story. Monero itself is a type of cryptocurrency that's been gaining a lot of popularity recently, and that's for a few reasons. You've firstly got the greater anonymity. It masks the sender and the recipient ID more effectively. Also, it masks how much is being sent. But one of the major things is how easy it is to mine. And this is really appealing to financially motivated threat actors. We've seen browsers, we've seen browser extensions, mobile apps, all spreading a specific type of software, which is CoinHive. And what's happened this week is we've seen something called CoffeeMiner, which is proof of concept, that's also been using this particular software. Harrison, what exactly is CoffeeMiner and what's been the update this week?
So CoffeeMiner is essentially using public Wi-Fi networks, and it gets the name coffee from kind of public Wi-Fi networks that are used in like Starbucks or coffee shops. So essentially it gets into Wi-Fi networks and then begins mining cryptocurrency through the use of a man-in-the-middle injection. Basically, it injects code into targeted web pages and then conducts the mining process using CoinHive. So as you said, this we've been seeing more and more of this kind of come about lately.
Yeah, CoinHive is interesting because it's not in and of itself an illegal thing. It's perfectly legitimate, and we would obviously encourage mining of cryptocurrencies. The controversy is it doesn't ask permission of the users to actually run the mining software using their CBU. So security firms like Malwarebytes have actually blocked CoinHive.com. They've now launched a separate product, which, as well as CoinHive, that does require explicit user opt-in, but we don't know exactly the adoption of that. There's also loads of other players in town. There's CryptoLoot as well, which is another example of a stealthy cryptocurrency miner that can be placed into websites. So yeah, really growing trend, I think.
Yeah, and something like something stealthy like that, again, something that has the ability to inject code. Obviously you prefer to have something like a cryptocurrency miner as opposed to something like ransomware. Or something more malicious. But, obviously there's still some things that can happen basically coming out of an infection from a cryptocurrency miner, something like degradation of your computing power, which is kind of the main thing that has been coming out of these miners is just the actual toll that it takes on a system. But again, I think the main thing is that though we haven't observed it, these crypto miners are able to inject code, which can then enable additional payloads outside of a cryptocurrency miner. So there's obviously something that you want to keep an eye on. Just kind of keep it in the back of your head that this is still possible with these kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's certainly interesting how financially motivated threat actors are changing how they operate. You've seen Venus Locker going from being a ransomware to actually mining cryptocurrency as well.
Right.
It's just another indication that like threat actors are often just motivated by money, and that's how the landscape will shift. In a more recent software that's emerged for cryptocurrency mining and specifically for Monero, and that's a product called CryptoJacker that we've recently seen advertised. And this looks to combine CoinHive, but also CryptoLoot as well, and the opt-in service Authmine. And these are incorporated into a WordPress plugin that people that own domains can run on their own sites. They can run it on their sites if they've got traffic. And if they don't actually have enough traffic to the site, it's actually got a functionality that it pulls in and clones a popular website, such as a news article on Bitcoin or something, and then it pulls in the metadata to make it more legitimate. And it's also even got social cloaking, which is when you post something on social media, the preview that it has appears to be the legitimate site itself. So it looks like some pretty cool functionality. We don't know just yet whether it's legitimate or a scam. We did have a look into it ourselves, and certainly there appeared to be some scripts running on the page when we visited their demo. It was the CPU usage went up to about 50%, and it looked like within the source code of the website itself, there were some references to CryptoLoot and some script executing there. So yeah, certainly an interesting new product that we're going to be keeping tabs on in the next few weeks.
Interesting. So how recent is this activity? Is it something new, or is it something that's just not really been observed, or what's going on?
So this particular software, it has got a website pointing towards it, and that is cryptojacker.co. That website was registered at the end of November 2017, so right at the time when cryptojacking was really gaining media attention. The same author of this software has also released previous types of software packages, and these relate to advertising, click fraud type opportunities. So it shows you that people are seeing that there is money to be made with cryptocurrency mining, and I think this is another attempt to provide a slightly different offering, but very much within the same space.
So how are they trying to sell it out to people? Is it standalone, or is it subscription based?
Yeah, it's standalone. So it's $29 at the moment. You get the software. If you've got hundreds of domains and websites, that's not a problem. The plugin can be put on all of those, showing that even criminals enjoy flexible licensing arrangements.
Well, don't we all?
Absolutely. And on to our second main story of the week, renewed activity of the Turla group. Harrison, who exactly is Turla?
Yeah, so Turla is believed to be a Russian nation state actor. They've been observed in the past targeting government entities, like things like ministries, embassies, or even intelligence agencies in countries such as the U.S., Europe, the Middle East. But basically, this new activity from them, which has been published by a research company called ESET, they claim to have observed some new TTPs from them, which involved Adobe. And basically, what was happening was these legitimate Adobe Flash players were being bundled with Turla-developed backdoors. And these are backdoor malwares that we've seen before, such as Mosquito and Snake.
Yeah.
But essentially, they were bundled together and then looked like they were being downloaded from legitimate Adobe domains.
Right. Is there any indication that Adobe itself was compromised?
No, and that is one thing that the researchers, or at least the paper, kind of states boldly, that they don't believe that Adobe's been compromised, but they do believe that the attackers were taking advantage of the brand name Adobe and making it look extremely legitimate.
Right. And Harrison, what exactly are the mitigation options for organizations? What can they learn from this?
Yeah, so the mitigation, it's difficult because there's not a really easy way to detect this kind of activity. Even if you had something like a host intrusion detection system on potentially affected devices or potentially infected devices, it's not certain that that would really catch, within that HID system itself. So, this kind of attack is very hard to spot, mainly because of how legitimate it looks, and it's spoofing a very trusted name like Adobe. That's obviously very difficult to catch.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on from one potentially Russian-related group to another, Fancy Bears and the Olympics. Rose, you've been looking into the Winter Olympics and threats to that this week. What's going on?
Well, the Winter Olympics are precipitously close, and as such, we are seeing an uptake in activity around them. So this week, we reported particularly on a new spearphishing campaign targeting organizations associated with or organizations involved in the Winter Olympics.
And is that sponsors?
It was largely just aimed at organizations connected with them. So anyone who had a email address with Winter Olympics in the suffix. That's in line with what we'd expect. If you think about threat actors who are trying to get you to open an email or a malicious document, they're going to want to make it attractive to you. So if you cast your mind back to the Rio Olympics in 2016, we saw a very similar level of activity, particularly involving banking malware and phishing emails connected to ticket sales, to events, all of that sort of thing.
Right. So is the indication that it is financially motivated at this stage? Do we know any actors behind it, or does it just look like opportunistic cybercrime?
Well, this particular campaign, we don't really know what the objective was. We think that it was to do with data exfiltration, but that doesn't really tell us anything about the nature of the threat actor, because they could be trying to get the data for more state-based purposes, or they could just be looking to sell it. The thing about a big sporting event like the Olympics is you are going to get threat actors from a wide variety of capabilities and intents who are all targeting it because of the publicity.
Let's talk about Fancy Bears.
Oh,
Who are the Fancy Bears?
The threat actors of the moment. So this is a really, really interesting case because we actually have two different groups. We have Fancy Bear, who are an APT group. They're also known as APT 28, who are allegedly connected to the Russian state and who are responsible for a whole ton of different campaigns. Then you also have Fancy Bears, which is the name that a threat actor is giving to themselves. And the two are often conflated and used interchangeably in security reports and in media reports, but there's actually no evidence to suggest that they're the same group. It's the difference of a letter, but it's actually a huge impact. I could make a website calling myself Fancy Bears, and you might assume that I was the same person, but I would not be.
Yeah, but they've been active, the Fancy Bears, this week.
They have, yes. So they have claimed to have leaked a whole bunch of data. This is carrying on from a campaign that, again, we saw in 2016, where a lot of data connected to the World Anti-Doping Agency was leaked. And this was largely thought to be the work of a Russian group in retaliation for the banning of Russian athletes from the Olympic Games. They've also attacked the International Olympic Committee, and now they're claiming to have done a very, very similar thing. We can't verify whether that information is correct or not, but they're certainly claiming it is.
Yeah. So I think that's really showing that what's the Winter Olympics now, a couple of weeks out?
Yeah.
As we're approaching that, there's a lot going on, and it's not just cybercrime. There's a whole host of different threat actors getting involved. So
absolutely. You're also probably going to see an uptake in activist activity, carrying on with Olympic hacking. You want to name an issue, I can find an activist group who are against it, but that's going to largely take the form of website defacements and alleged data leaks again, but that will be even companies associated with the Olympics sponsoring it because they're using that massive publicity as a way of getting their cause out.
Right. And if you're an organization that is a sponsor and you're looking at something like Olympic hacking, is there anything that you can do to prepare yourself?
I think that the first thing to remember is with activist attacks, they are disruptive, but they're not necessarily destructive. So website defacement it has a reputational impact, but it's not necessarily going to make a difference to the integrity of your systems.
Right. Yeah. And who are the actors behind Olympic hacking? What's their beef with?
Well, during the Rio Olympics, it was largely Brazilian groups who were targeting the Brazilian government due to perceived corruption and companies connected to the Brazilian government. I think that now we've moved the Olympics to South Korea, we'll probably be looking again at anonymous affiliated groups trying to emphasize the political conflict between North and South Korea. We also might see some evidence or retaliation for Op Russia and Op Avenge Sochi, which happened after the World Cup and is still going on. They're still pretty angry about that.
Wow. So as you're monitoring for the rest of the threats to the Winter Olympics, you've got that trinity to look out for, the nation, cyber criminals and hacktivists. So
yeah,
that's a nice busy few weeks for you.
Yeah.
Right, that concludes today's episode. Thank you to Rose.
Thank you.
And thank you to Harrison.
Thank you, Michael.
Great. Have a great week and speak to you next week. Thank you for listening to Digital Shadows Shadow Talk. For more information on our research, please visit resources.digitalshadows.com.